Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Kelly, aka Vinyl Princess. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much for coming to check me out. If you are returning, thank you so much for supporting my channel. So today, let's bite the bullet. Let's talk about the thing that everyone's been talking about since it happened. Let's talk about Record Store Day. But I don't want to take on the natural flow of what everyone else has been doing. I want to do this a little differently. I want to use my experiences and I want to talk about the nuts and bolts of really what is Record Store Day. So, what is it? What do you need to know? What should you expect? And how can you prepare? And then, if you hang in with me through all of that, I will go through what I found during Record Store Day and I will show you my finds and we'll talk a little bit about them. So, let's get this party started. So, and again, I'm always going to scratch my nose for some reason. It always happens when I start recording. I don't scratch my nose any other time, just when I start recording. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about my first Record Store Day experience. It happened in April of 2022. I, again, have been I have been collecting since 2014. Record Store Day has been around since 2007, 2008. And 2022 was the first time I'd heard about Record Store Day. So I went to my local record store, which is Karma. I went in, there was no line outside, but I did hit a line as soon as I got in the door. It was maybe 10 deep, waiting to get to the back of the store to the bins that were holding all of the Record Store Day collection for sale. I get up there, you guys, I was lost, I was overwhelmed, and I was in over my head. I was in the middle of a forest with absolutely no idea which direction I needed to go. I had no idea the significance of the albums. I had sticker shock at the prices. And thank God I started vocalizing some of this out loud. And a guy who was in front of me turned around and started talking to me. And we just started talking. And so I started asking him some questions. And he answered my questions. And he started feeding me information. So the first thing that he fed me was there's a list that comes out prior to Record Store Day. And this list is going to tell you everything that's available. And that list is typically available 3 months ahead of time. And he gave me the address. So he's like, it's at recordstoreday.com. That's the website for this whole event. And that's where you're going to get all your information. So I finished going through the bins and I walk out of there with ABC by the Jackson 5. For me, that was a hit because I'm a huge Motown fan. So walking out of there with Jackson 5, I'm like, yes, I got it. So that was my first experience. Now, here are the things I wish people had talked to me about and I had known more about before I went and did my first Record Store Day. I would have been much more prepared. And everything that I didn't know are things that I developed for Record Store Day in April of 2023. And this is what I'm going to share with you guys. So I wish I had known a little bit more about what Record Store Day was. So Record Store Day is specifically a day for indie record stores or independent record stores to get people into their stores, to help them make their money for the rest of the year. These 2 days help them make their operating money for the rest of the year. So it's a very big day for them. The albums that are released on these days are things that have never been released before on vinyl. They could be albums that were released at one point, but they've had more material added to it to make it special for Record Store Day. They could be albums that have never seen a vinyl pressing before. Or they could be artist work. So they might take a couple songs off one album, a couple songs off of another album, and merge them together to make an EP. A lot of times they'll do the B-sides of EPs. Those songs that are buried but people love them, they'll do some of those things and they'll put those on an album and they'll press them. So there's a lot of uniqueness that goes into these albums, and they are special and they are unique for us record collectors. They're just little pieces that we can add. And I will tell you, I love some of the things that they come out with B-sides, because those are the songs that are buried in. And I will talk about that towards the end when I show you guys my collection that I got from Record Store Day, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So it happens twice a year. These are never going to be found on Record Store Days at big box stores. They will never be found online until the following day. Once everyone has a chance to get through them on the actual day of Record Store, the record stores can then launch them onto their websites and sell whatever is left, but they cannot do it on the day of. You should not be seeing these on Amazon on Record Store Day. You should not be seeing them on eBay on Record Store Day. They should not be popping up until after the day. And shame on you if you do that. Sorry, I'm adding my own opinion in there. And then we got to talk about what to expect, because Record Store Day in and of itself is unique. It's a fun day. It's a tiring day, and it can be a cold day. So first, let's talk about the people that you're going to meet. There's two types of people that go to Record Store Day. There are the early birds. These are the people that you'll see camping out overnight because they know exactly what they want. They got their money in their pocket and they're ready to buy, and they plan on walking out of there with everything. Then you have the people that are still early birds, but that are going to come in a little bit closer to the store opening. That's kind of me. I'm not a camping out kind of girl. I love my bed too much. And getting up in the morning, showering, throwing on my clothes, and then heading out. So I won't be camping out as of right now as I say that. That doesn't mean it won't ever happen. I just don't anticipate that ever happening. But I'll be there early, and I'll be there before doors open. And then you have your later gators. And these are the people who are not about getting up early and standing in line. These are the people that are going to show up a little bit later in the day and go through whatever's left and hope that what they were wanting will be available, or they wanted so much it doesn't really matter, that they'll probably end up with what they want. When you're dealing with the early birds, they're going to come prepared. They're going to be there camping out. They're going to have chairs and blankets and coffee and extra people there, and they're going to have a plan. So when we talk about Record Store Day, you need to come prepared. And there's 3 things that you need. Number 1, you're going to need patience. You're going to be waiting in line outside, inside, and before you pay. So there is no rushing in and rushing out. You just need to come prepared to stand in line. So that means wearing, number 2, warm clothes and being prepared for the elements. And 3, make sure that you are wearing comfortable shoes. This is a long day. This is the long game. This is 24 hours for some people, and they will do whatever it takes to get everything that they want on their list. So come and be prepared. And patience is your friend on this day. When it comes to, just reading my notes here, when it comes to the day, know that a lot of these places are indie record stores. They're small. In the case of Karma, which is where I typically go, their parking lot is very small. It's only going to hold less than 20 cars. So we all know that we're going to be parking across the street and walking across a very busy intersection, or we're going to be parking down a few places down, either in the dentist office or something along those lines. So keep that in mind. Some places are in villages. You might be parking on the street. You might have to park in a garage to walk in. So just be prepared for that. In terms of anything else in that area, you need to be prepared for the cost. What you buy at Record Store Day is going to be expensive. And there's really no way to really prepare you for this until you've done your first one. I'm going to give you some tips here in just a second to how you can plan for it. But it's a day, and you just need to be ready for it. You might walk into an independent store that's having a big party attached to it, where they'll have a live band. They might have food. They might have raffles. And some of the stores don't do that, but maybe they do percentages off of records that are pre-owned, or, a percentage off new records. Your Record Store Days will never have a percentage off. ever. That doesn't come right away. That's 3-4 months down the line when they still have stuff left, if they have stuff left. In terms of preparing for the day, there's a couple things that you need to know when it comes to record store day. Number one, you need to know where the list is. So the list is usually coming out early. For the one in April, I believe it came out on February the 16th. Once that came out, you're able to download it into a PDF or you're able to look at it online. My recommendation to you is you get familiar with the list. So let's kind of talk a little bit about what the list looks like. It's going to have everything on it. I think it was 10 pages this year, so quite a bit is on that list. It's going to have the name of the album, the name of the record. It's going to have what label it is on. It's going to tell you how it's categorized. And then it's going to tell you how many copies are printed. How it's categorized and the number of prints being made or how many pressings will be available are the two most important columns that you need to make sure you recognize and you see, because that's going to tell you everything. So if it says that it is an exclusive, that means it's only going to be released to the indie record stores. There's not going to be any other way to get a hold of these at this particular moment. And that there's only going to be so many pressed. So if you want an exclusive, make sure you know what that band is and do a little research. When it comes to record store day first, man, that's a mouthful. Those are albums that are going to be released on record store day. However, in coming months, you will see additional copies in big box stores, online, Amazon, eBay, name the gamut. That's where they'll be. But that takes a couple months to get to that point. So record store day is the first point, and then they'll move it on down the road to the other places. Small runs and regionals. These are things that are specific to maybe a city, a state, or a record store, or a region like Midwest or Pacific West, something along those lines. If you see something that says small runs or regional, if it doesn't look familiar to you, you're probably not going to get it. Don't even put it on your list. If you see it, great, you can pick it up if it's something you really want. But I didn't see a lot of those this time, and I think they're very specific. I didn't see as many of them as what some people say that there are. I think maybe 2 or 3, not a big deal. So we talked about that. So that's the first thing you need to do. When it comes to that list, you want to review it 3 times. First time, just to get an idea of what's on it. Second time, start looking at what it is that you really want. The third time is when you start finalizing pieces. When you get to your third time, this is where you're going to start wanting to figure out, okay, I really have this whittled down. I may have had 20 my first time when I was looking at it. I may have whittled it down to 15. And out of the 15, 10 of these I really want. 5 of them are okay. If I get a hold of them, I'll be happy with that. So we need to start talking about budgeting for this. Some people have that money readily available. They can go drop $500 for new records. Some people like me, I have to budget for that. So I knew record store day was coming and I was putting away money. Now, the problem with me is when I walk into a record store, I buy records. So I was pulling money out while I was putting money in. But I was still budgeting for it. So I think I had $500 in my savings holding for that. And then I knew I had an additional couple $100 if I needed it. I knew going in based on my list, I had 9 albums that I was looking for. Now, when it came time to build my budget, because again, when we get the list, there's no money attached to these records. We have no idea what the records are going to cost when that list first comes out. You are going to know when we get a month out. There's a couple of record stores that will put out a video that will tell you what the suggested retail price is for each of these albums. So let's rewind and let's go back. Before we get that, we need to know kind of how we're budgeting this. First thing I would tell you is if you're going to get a box set, you're looking at any of the box sets, those are going to be $100 off the pop. So if you budget $100 to about 115 for those, you're going to be in the ballpark. Now, if you're going to be budgeting, let's say you're a jazz collector, those jazz albums are pretty expensive. They're between, if you budget between 40 and 50, 45 and $50, you're in the ballpark. And again, these are budget numbers. These are just, I'm playing with it. I'm trying to figure it out. What am I looking at trying to put away? And hopefully by the time the list gets, you've already had some money socked away if that's what you need to do. If you are looking at EPs, so those special albums that just have maybe 4 to 6 songs on them, those are going to be around $25.99 roughly. Again, a good budget number. And everything else, if you budget for anything else right around $39.99, you're in the ballpark. Now again, inflation and all that other stuff can come into play, but right now, this is how I worked my list and this is how I budgeted for what I needed to budget for. So once that list comes out with the suggested retail price, and if I see it come up first, I will link it to mine so that you can click off of my page and click into it. I will save it so you can see it. When that comes out, replace your budget numbers with the suggested retail price numbers. That will get you, again, you'll see how close you actually are. And then if you add an additional $20 to $30 to that, that should be enough to make up the difference because these record stores have to purchase these records. They're not given to them. They don't receive them and say, hey, go sell these and then the profits come to you. No, it's you go sell these because you bought them and you upped the money. So once whatever you make afterwards is yours. So we got to make sure that they get their due. So they're always going to add $2 to $5 more on top of it. That's typically what I was seeing this year is about $2 to $5 more on the suggested retail price. Now, when all of that is said and done, you have your list put together about a week out before the actual date. You need to prioritize. You need to ask yourself, what album on this list am I not willing to go without during this record store day event? What do I want to walk out of here with? And you need to rank them 1 to whatever you have on your list. In my case, it was 1 to 9. So I knew 1, 2, and 3, what they were. My first album, I was able to get, and I'll tell you why. When I got to record store day within 20 minutes before the doors opened, the Karma people were out walking. And they asked everyone, what is the one album you want to walk out of here with today? If you get nothing else, what is that one album? So, knowing what my list was, I put what I thought was going to be the hardest to get a hold of. And then they gave me another piece of paper and they're like, write on here everything else that you want. So I did that. I'm not going to say I didn't because I did. I knew based on people and I knew based on what was available, everything was going to be popular. I just underestimated how popular and the quantities received, what those were going to look like. So I got my number 1. My number 2, I had to go to 2 different locations to find it. On the 3rd location, I found it and I got the last one. My number 3, I have not gotten yet. I'm still looking. So if I get it, great. If I don't, bummer. And then you just keep working down the list. Every record store on this day is going to have their own thing that they do. Some people just have you go in and that you freewheel it. You are wild westing it. You stay in your order and you just start flipping through the records. Some record stores will have you give them your list. They will go through and pull them and they'll have them waiting for you at the register. You pay, you're out of there. Others, who knows? Others may say, you know what, you can come in and get your what, I don't know. I can't even imagine other scenarios. Those are the 2 scenarios that I know most about. A lot of record stores will only allow you to get 1 of each of the records. Some record stores, if they have larger selections, more numbers of each record, they might allow you to get multiples. but most of the time it's a onesie. You get one of each record. So we talked about all of that. So most importantly, just know what you're doing. Make sure you prioritize. And the very last tip I have for you is look for something outside of your comfort zone. If you don't listen to a lot of jazz, maybe find an inexpensive jazz record and pick that up. If you are more jazzy and you don't typically listen to Motown, maybe pick up something that's Motown. That might still be in your wheelhouse. But just try something different. It's a great opportunity to have access to artists that we wouldn't normally have access to, or to albums that have not been pressed in a while. So keep that in mind when you're going through. So let's take a second. If you like this content, please give me a thumbs up. If you think this is great and you want to get more information about building your own record collection and tips and tricks and things that you would like to know about building a record collection, subscribe. And don't forget to click the bell to be notified when I'm releasing new information. So I promised you guys I would show you what I got, and I'm going to. And I'm going to try to tell you some other things about these albums. So let's roll with it. So I told you guys I had my 3. This album was number 1 on my list in terms of what I wanted to walk away with. But I did not think that this album was going to be as hard to find. So I went to Karma, did not have it. I went to the next place, which I don't like going to on Record Store Day. I'm going to be honest with you. It's everyone goes there and there's always a line. So I went there, and before I got in line, I remember looking at the guy saying, before I get in this line, can you go look and tell me if you have the Belinda Carlisle one? He went and looked real quick. He's like, no, we don't have it. I'm like, thank you. And then I went right back to my car after I paid for parking and went to the 3rd location. On the way there, I'm like, I'm on my way. Do you have this album? Can you look and tell me? They looked. They had 1 copy left. I got there and it was still there and I bought it. Record Store Day, they will not hold records for you. They will not put records aside. None of the above. So it is what it is. You get what you get. Period. So, Belinda Carlisle. Belinda Carlisle, for those of you who don't know her, or the people who are a little bit younger, she was a lead singer of the Go-Go's in the mid-90s, no, late 80s, early 90s. She separated and went on a solo career, and she released songs like Heaven is a Place on Earth, I Get Weak, which is my personal favorite, Circle in the Sand, and so on and so forth. So this album is all about remixes. It takes these classic, kind of upbeat 80s songs and remixes them to a dance beat. The album itself is really great, and they did a really great job with the theming. It's very 80s-ish, sticking to who she was. So this is just one of the covers. One of the covers for the albums. And then they're actually clear. Let me pull one out here. Trying not to touch it too much, just on the very edges. So it's a clear album. I love the presentation of this album. The album itself lacked quite a bit. They did a great job with the remix and creating the dance beats. They, however, did not spend the right amount of time with the source material, aka her vocals, and cleaning those up before they released it. So when you have things like Heaven is a Place on Earth, the vocals are so muddy and so dirty. And when they lay over the dance beat and everything to it and they mix it, it doesn't sound right to your ear. It sounds very off. All in all, album I wanted the most is the album I'm most disappointed with. Is this something I'll listen to again? Probably. Will I pick it up every weekend and listen to it? Absolutely not. It's not a Led Zeppelin type of album for me. Next album up is Diana Summers. So this is this is something I had a lot of hope for because I'm a big Diana Summers fan, and I am a big disco person. And Diana Summers, for those of you who don't know who she's the disco queen. She is the ultimate. She has some of the best songs out there. This is based off of a live recording that happened in August of 1983, and at that point, she had Love to Love You Baby, which is not on here. She had Last Dance, which is one of her largest albums, or largest songs. She had Bad Girls. She had Hot Stuff, Dim All the Lights, Sunset People. So those are all her bigger songs. Those songs are not played until you get to the second album of this series. And that's pretty disappointing for me, being someone who really, really, really loves Diana Summers and disco. Again, another clear album. And this one is a gatefold, and unfortunately I have it in its protective packing, so I can't open it, but the gatefold shows some of the lyrics and things from the show, and it has some pictures and things like that. All in all, pretty disappointed by this. Will I listen to it again? Probably. It's a great piece. More than likely it'll just be something that I'll put out as decoration. Kind of in the same vein is this. So this is a soundtrack based from the movie Spinning Gold. I saw the movie. I loved the music. I liked the story idea, but the actual presentation lacked a lot. So the movie wasn't that great. It'll probably end up being one of those movies that will end up, you watch it a few times and it becomes a cult classic, kind of like Last Days of Disco or one of those. This is all about a record company known as Casablanca Records. And they were pretty ballsy back in the day. So we got to set the stage. So this is late 70s. So disco was still hot. Close to the 80s when, we're blowing up disco records at baseball games and we're seeing an insurgence. We're a few years away from MTV. We're a few years away from, and by a few, I mean 3 or 4 years away, from, rock really taking over, hair bands, Twisted Sister, We're Not Gonna Take It, Kiss, all of that's coming together. So, on the soundtrack, it has some really great things. You have Wiz Khalifa, who in the movie plays George Clinton. So George Clinton, I don't need to say more, right? So he portrays George Clinton. We have Jason Derulo, who is also in the movie. He portrays Ron Isley. And here's the big thing that you need to know about this movie. The owner of Casablanca Records goes head to head with Motown. And people are very protective of their artists at this point. It's kind of like a family. You don't mess with your artist. So there's a great storyline here. You have Tyla Parks, who plays a young Donna Summers, on the cusp of becoming a star based off of a demo that she was doing for a song that she wrote. She had no intention of ever becoming an artist. So the content, again, is really great. The music is outstanding, and it's got some really great vocals. Jeremy Jordan, Broadway, movies, musicals, he's done it all. So if you enjoy good vocals, that's what makes this unique. Also, just the songs that are on it and how broad they are, and the variety and the eclectic nature of this album. So like it, I will be listening to this again. And I love the cover. And this album, since we're showing what albums look like, is a gold. So gold, and this is so awkward to try to show you guys this, but gold album. Next up, Our Lady of Peace. So I am 80s, 90s kid. And for me, Our Lady of Peace was a big part of my 90s. A couple things that I left in here. I like these hype stickers. So if I can ever open albums and keep it on there, I will. But sometimes the way they package them, it's not always easy. But this hype sticker talks about how this is the 30th year, and it's the 30th anniversary of Our Lady of Peace. It talks about the fact this is a limited edition. And then you have this really great cover. And I was able to save the price. So remember when I told you guys about the pricing? Remember I said if you got to the $39.99, you were in the ballpark? So this one was $47.99. Again, I said $5 to $7 difference. Again, there's no telling. It just depends. But again, planning purposes, this is where I was. So another great album. I love this album, and I'll listen to it multiple times. So I told you guys I had my number one, and this is my number one pick. Elton John, Don't Shoot the Piano Player. I'm a big Elton John fan, and for me, I've always had his greatest hits, but I've never really dug into anything outside of his greatest hits. So this gave me the opportunity to do this. And this is really interesting because the album is it starts with Daniel, so that's bookend number 1, and almost ends with Crocodile Rock. It's the second to last song on the second side. So you have all this other great music that's never heard bookend between these two huge hits, from where it probably was when it started to where he's come as an artist. So again, pretty interesting. And if you don't pick up actual albums and you only listen to the greatest hits, you don't always get everything in between. This takes me to the album that was kind of in the middle of my pack when I was talking about ranking them. This was probably somewhere between 4, 5, and 6 for me. I knew I wanted it, but it wasn't going to be the end of boo-hooing and upset if I didn't get it. But I'm pleasantly surprised with it. So for me, this is probably one of the best albums I picked up. And it's The Temptations. And this album, I'm going to flip it over and show you the back, because this picture right here really tells you what is on this album. So they start with classic Motown, and this is kind of what Motown looked like. And then you work through the years, and all of a sudden you got this funky right here. It's funk. It's just in your face, and it's fun. And that is how this album is. Side 1, it ends with Papa is a Rolling Stone, but the other 2 songs are really good. Run Charlie Run, amazing. And then you have the second side, which is pure Motown, and it's got some of the big writers, Ashford and Sampson, Isaac Hayes. Those are the big call outs on this. So totally worth every dollar. And it's funny because when I told people I picked this up, they're like, oh yeah, my dad had this. Or, oh yeah, my grandma had this. And I'm like, right on. That means I'm in the right place. If it stand the test of time and people are still talking about it, good album. So then I wanted to show you the last thing from my picks, and that is something I wanted to try that was a little bit different. And that is Strawberry Alarm Clock. It's right in my wheelhouse in terms of, Beatles and funky and that 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s type of thing that goes on. It's right there, but I had never heard of them. So I wanted to try something different, and so this was my something different. And again, this is one of them that it wasn't make or break for me. I would say this was probably number 9 on my list. So if I got it, great. If I didn't, I wasn't going to be upset or depressed. So what do you guys think? How did you guys like that, that eclecticness of that? What kind of questions do you guys have as it pertains to Record Store Day, what to expect? Shoot them in the, put them in the comments, and I will respond back to you. And if there's enough of them, I will do a live, and I'll go through and we'll talk about it, and I'll answer all of your questions. So that brings me to the end of my video. And I guess the thing I will say to you is, people will say, well, is Record Store Day really worth it? You've given us a lot of information and things to think about, and a lot of preparation. Is it worth it? Absolutely. It's a lot of hard work. It's very expensive. But when you hear people talk about music the way that I talk about it, the way that some of the other people and the other YouTube channels talk about it, it is. And the music that we get and what we add to our collection and kind of what it does, I think it's amazing. And I think you can really be eclectic. And it's great additions to people's collections and a great chance to experience things that you don't normally get to experience. So absolutely, completely 110% worth it. So that brings me to the end. Thank you so much for watching. Again, don't forget to subscribe and click that little bell and give me a thumbs up. Until next time, keep exploring your vinyl identity and keep those records spinning.